Drill Friday. And before I introduce Jensikwe, who is going to welcome us to this land, I'd like all of you to think about this. The same toxic ideology that took this land from people who already lived here, that kidnapped people from Africa, turning them into slaves to work that stolen land, justified it by saying that those kidnapped and displaced people were not human beings, cut down the forests and exhausted the natural world just as it did the people. This foundational ideology is the same one that has brought us the human-driven climate change that we're facing today. Let us remember and celebrate what was and what we hope will be. And with that, I would like to invite Jensikwe Medina Tayak to come up here and welcome us to her people's land.
Hello everyone. My name is Jensikwe Medina Tayak. I am 17 years old and I am a member of the Piscataway Indian Nation. Our traditional territory spans all the way from the Potomac River down to the Chesapeake Bay. So yes, the very land we are standing on right now is Piscataway Indian land. I'm here not only to welcome you to this space, but remind you that indigenous people have been fighting for this earth since the early 1600s. We are the original protectors of this earth, and it is indigenous ways of life that we need to follow in order to solve the climate crisis. We need to decolonize, demilitarize our ways of thinking, and learn how to live sustainably. We need to recognize and change the systems that encourage us to take and never give back. It is these powers that are constantly encouraging the pollution and destruction of entire ecosystems and species. I've been thinking a lot lately about how much time and money our nation spends on things like war and evil corporations and mass production. What if we spent all that energy on solving the climate crisis? What if all people privileged enough to have free time worked on solving the climate crisis? That burden should not be put on young people, on Native people, on frontline communities. I should not have to be standing here today. Native kids in places like Standing Rock should not have to take time off school or leave school to fight for their lives. Their parents shouldn't have to take time off work or leave their jobs to fight for their children's future. We need every person, every helping hand, every heart in the world to come together and help end this attack on our planet now. Thank you everyone for being here and for fighting with me.
So much is happening in the news. There's so much noise, right? We have to ensure that the climate crisis remains front and center, and that's why we're here. I've been feeling that I wasn't doing enough. But over Labor Day, I read this book. This is a new book by Naomi Klein, On Fire, Burning Case for a Green New Deal. And this inspired me. It helped me understand the importance of a Green New Deal. And Greta Thunberg and the global movement of student climate strikers have moved me to greater action. As Naomi Klein says, these students have told us that we've stolen their childhoods. They've already given up so much to fight for their right to a future. So the question for the rest of us is, what are we willing to give up? What time and energy will we devote to it? What sacrifices will we make? And that's why I've decided to move here for 4 months. I'm standing with the young people. I want to help lift their message. Greta Thunberg said we have to behave like we're in a crisis. Our house is in fire. And so we're calling these Fridays Fire Drill Fridays. Every Friday for the next 4 months at 11 a.m. we're going to be right here. And every Friday we're going to focus on a different aspect of the climate crisis. For example, stopping all new fossil fuel developments. Because without that, we're doomed. Phasing out existing production over 30 years while ensuring a fair transition for workers and communities that currently depend on fossil fuel production. We have to understand there are going to be many more jobs created when we transition to renewables, but we have to guarantee that they are union-paying jobs, that they pay the same as the workers are earning now in the fossil fuel industry, with the same salaries, the same benefits, the same overtime salaries that will allow them to support families, buy homes, have health care, send their children to school and college. And we're going to focus on environmental justice, on the military and climate change. We're going to focus on oceans and forests and food and health and mass migration and women. Next Friday, we're going to go into the meaning of a Green New Deal. Change is coming by disaster or by design. A Green New Deal that transitions us off fossil fuels provides the design we need, the framework to guide us going forward. Every Friday, we're inviting experts, activists, celebrities, and the people who live in the most impacted frontline communities to speak to us. Now, these are complex topics that we need to better understand. I know I do. And we need to understand how to connect the dots between these different issues so that we can be better climate scientists, climate activists. We have to listen to the science. People have to know that 97% or more of climate scientists globally tell us that we are facing a major crisis. It's important that we know that. There is virtual unanimity on that score. So many of us understand that this is a man-made crisis and feel overwhelmed or we don't know what to do. We make personal choices like driving an electric car or going vegan, recycling, and we think that that's enough. And it's great, and we have to keep doing it. But this is a collective crisis that demands collective action now. Our individual choices cannot be brought to scale in time to get us there. As you may know, last year, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change published its report, which stated in no uncertain terms that given the worsening climate disasters we're already seeing, and the additional warming that is already baked in because we didn't act 30 years ago, we do not stand a chance at changing course in time without profound systemic, economic, and social change. Think about that. And they say we have at best 11 years before the tipping point is reached. There is no historical precedent for the scale of the necessary transition. It is too late for moderation, too late for moderation. You see, if we had known what was happening 30 years ago, the transition could have been incremental, could have been moderate. But we were lied to, we were hoodwinked by the fossil fuel industry into believing that the earth was ours to endlessly exploit without consequence. even though ExxonMobil and its ilk knew all along that they were inflicting irreparable damage on the earth. They knew. And they lied. And they hid what they knew. And because of that, we don't have very much time left. Greta's right. Shame on them. And shame on the politicians they bought off. What Naomi's book makes clear is that this is going to take an all-out war on drilling and fracking and deregulation and racism and misogyny and colonialism and despair all at the same time. Yes, yes, we are facing a climate crisis, but we are also facing an empathy crisis. It isn't only Earth support systems that are unraveling. Our social fabric is unraveling. And since we have to make deep systemic changes and need the largest possible coalition to support the changes, we have a once-in-a-century opportunity to put it back together again in a way that closes all the deep inequalities, strengthens and transforms the public sphere, generates plentiful, well-paying jobs, radically reins in corporate power, and elevates the low-carbon, empathy-rich professions in the public sector like teaching, nursing, and home care. You know, women's jobs. Think the New Deal, but bigger, greener, and fairer. This holistic win-win of a vision, which is a Green New Deal, is the other transformative thing Naomi's book helped me to understand. And sure, it's going to cost a whole lot of money, but so did the 2008 bailout of the banks, the car companies, and insurance companies. So did the New Deal during the Great Depression in the 1930s. So did the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after the Second World War. And we taxpayers give up to $16 billion every year in subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. Let's use that to start funding a Green New Deal. We can do it. We have the money and the technology to do it. It's the political will that's lacking. And we, the people, can do something about that, right?
Right.
We can do this. Because we have to do it. And now I want to introduce Jerome Foster II. He's a 17-year-old African-American author and high school senior. Jerome strikes in front of the White House every Friday. He coordinated and led the climate march from the White House to the Supreme Court as part of the Climate Strikes movement. He is the founder and director of 1 Million of Us, which is mobilizing a new generation of young people to register and turn out to vote in the 2020 presidential election.
Yes.
He's been featured on Time Magazine, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, Teen Vogue, Telemundo, Elle, Axio, and many others. Jerome, come on up.
That's leadership.
Thank you for the amazing introduction. But I want to shift in tone a little bit. I want to shift to say that today is an important day for young people to be in solidarity with adults and older generations, to say that enough is enough and that climate action is needed. But today is not a day that we should be celebrating. Today is a day where we should have a call to action. As we stand in front of these steps, we must ensure that we do not look past them and say we need to look to world leaders first. We must look for a national call to action. We must look for our elected officials to start the change. Because change is a ripple effect. It starts with you, it starts with your community, it starts with your government, it starts with the people that are around you, and then it snowballs into the rest of the world. Young people, were the first people to sound the alarm.
Yep.
But they actually weren't the first people to sound the alarm. They were actually indigenous people. Thousands of years ago, they have been fighting for their rights. They've been fighting for clean air, clean water, and a livable future. They have been fighting for the bare essentials because we have stripped that away from them. We have stripped them from their land. We've stripped them from their connection to the earth, but we expect them to continue to live on. We must actually look to indigenous people. We must look to indigenous people as not just people that can speak to their voices, but people at the negotiation table. From the Inuit Circumpolar Council to communities in Brazil, to the people that are in Borneo whose communities are burning as we speak. We must have them at the table because they are an essential part of our community. We have cast them out of the global conversation. But as a result of that, we are facing the effects. Because right now, we're saying that we are living at odds with the natural cycles. So humanity is rebelling back. Humanity is saying enough is enough, and I will not continue to be exploited. My lands will not continue to be degraded. My lands will not continue to be burned and continue to be destroyed. What we're saying is that Earth must be something that we work alongside, and that only comes from listening to indigenous people, and that's what's essential.
Yes.
When we actually talk about a solution, we have to talk about how it starts. Change doesn't start just from a siloed nation not working with other countries.
Right.
Change starts from a united front. Change can only happen with unity. Change can only happen when everyone is at the table, because it's only in the cracks of division corruption can seep in, and it's only in the cracks of division that and pollution can pour out. That's what we're saying when we're saying we want unity. We're saying that we don't want world leaders to say, well, this is going to help for my country, and I don't really care what's going to happen for the rest of the world. What we're saying is that we want world leaders to understand that we are a part of one earth, one pale blue dot that's in the middle of an endless sea of blackness. What we're saying is that we must act as such. We must act as if we are one people, one planet, and one globally interconnected nation. We must act as not if Pakistan is any different than India, or if India is any different than the United States, or the United States is any different from South America or the nations that are there. We must act as if we are in a global crisis because we are in one. We cannot look to young people for hope until we see action. We cannot look for young people to bring a livable future because we don't have the power to do so. World leaders have the power to do so. So when we bring young people up to talk, we must also bring them to the table where we talk to elected officials. We, young people, are uniting all around the world to show world leaders what real action looks like. We're showing them that now is not the time to continue to focus on geopolitical tensions, but focus on being united in solidarity with one another. It starts with one nation. It starts with us. But it ends with everyone involved. It ends with everyone being at the table and saying that now is the time for us to enact the Green New Deal. Now is the time for us to make sure that we are no longer exploiting communities. Now is the time for us to make sure that we are not continuing to exploit and use capitalism as an excuse to allow people to die at the hands of just unemployment or economic injustice. What we're saying is that we need world leaders to understand that empathy and unity is the only way we can solve a crisis. Greta Thunberg started the climate strikes movement. And we strike every single Friday to say that we cannot just continue to say this is one event and that we've stopped after that. What we're saying is that if this crisis will continue to go on and on and on, we will continue to strike every single Friday and go on and on and on. Because this crisis will never stop until we understand that we must take tangible actions and not just empty words, spread it to the youth. We must actually say that you cannot just have politicians that come up here and talk about how they're making empty promises, but require them to come up here with tangible solutions and tangible legislation to act and actually implement a solution.
Yes.
Yes.
One ask that I have for everyone who's in this crowd today is that you must call your member of Congress. If I used to intern for Congressman John Lewis, and when I interned there, I saw that we had about 100 phone calls a week. Only 100, and he's very popular because he's a civil rights leader.
Yeah.
But say everyone in this crowd called their member of Congress today, that will have momentum in Congress. That would have momentum to change what they do for the next month, and for the next week, and for the next year. That's what my ask for you to do, is to call your member of Congress. and to register to vote. You can go to 1 million of us, you can go to 1millionof.us and register to vote. It takes literally 2 minutes. And everyone here should be able to vote, because we can't just come out here and come and say, I'm in this crowd and I'm part of the movement. We have to be a part of the movement and have tangible impact by actually going to the polls. It starts in the streets, but it ends in the polls. So I'm going to start a chant and say, take it to the streets. And when I say take it to the streets, you say take it to the polls. Take it to the streets.
Take it to the polls.
Take it to the streets.
Take it to the polls.
Take it to the streets.
Take it to the polls.
Okay. Gonna have to get a little bit louder than that. One more time. Take it to the streets.
Take it to the polls.
There we go. My one ask to world leaders right after this is that they must have moral clarity. They must have political courage, and they must work internationally to solve this crisis. And we must ask all of our political leaders to do the same, to act as if our house is on fire, because our house is on fire. Look around the world as we're seeing entire communities being leveled. We're seeing entire communities going underwater. This is not a drill. Our entire planet is burning. Our entire planet is mourning. And we cannot act as if this is business as usual, because a crisis is not business as usual. Business as usual is solving a crisis.
Thank you so much. I am not quite as young or as well-spoken as Jerome. I was born in 1977. And to go back to something Jane was saying, since the year I was born, in 1977, ExxonMobil has known perfectly well what was going on with the science of climate change. They knew perfectly well that they were putting at risk food, water, shelter, the basic needs that we have as human beings. And they knew perfectly well that these impacts would hit disproportionately those who are most vulnerable. And that entire time, the people in this building behind me have taken money from them, have opened their doors to them, have welcomed them into their offices. And that is what brings us to today, where we are honestly in a very bad situation. We have white nationalists who have a lot of influence in this country. We have oil, gas, coal, oligarchs in bed with them in order to hold up the power structures of this country. We have been for decades ignoring climate science deadline. Deadline after deadline has passed. I remember when we were talking about deadlines in 2012, talking about how we had to hit peak and decline in 2020, or people would be suffering. They would lose their homes from hurricanes. Fires would be so rampant that we would lose control of our communities. That's happening because we've missed all of those deadlines. It is way past time for us to turn this around. And I believe that we will turn this around. I do want to say that and I believe we will do this, even as we launch the era of the Green New Deal, we are still going to have climate impacts because we've just waited for too long. One of the things that really struck me in the last UN climate report was this statement that these things we knew as 100-year floods in our generation, our kids, I have an 8-year-old, our kids are going to experience those kinds of floods annually in a lot of places. There's not that much we can do to change that at this point, but what we can do is create a completely different kind of society for our kids, where we take care of each other when those floods happen.
At 11 o'clock, rain or shine or snow or blizzard, whatever. I also want to let you know that every Thursday night at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a digital live stream teach-in where the scientists and experts who speak on Friday will be able to go deeper into these issues so that we understand better what it is we're facing. And then they will take questions from the audience online. So you can join us on Facebook Live for the teach-ins and follow us on all social media platforms at Fire Drill Friday. We are now going to walk over to the steps of the Capitol and engage in civil disobedience for those of you who would like to join us. Thank you.
Folks, the house is on fire! Put the fire out! The house is on fire! Put the fire out! The house is on fire! Put the fire out!
Come on, back up some more. Come on, back up some more. Gotta back up some more. Keep backing up some more. Keep backing up. Keep backing up.
Folks, we're going to push you right back into the skylight area. Keep moving back. Thank you.
Back up. You gotta back up.
Stop backing up.